Recently my wife made a comment about the low water level in the bowl in the toilet, so I wanted to take a look at it and see what we could potentially fix. A leak in the valve was sending water to the large upper bowl instead of to the lower bowl. So I did what I do in most projects. I looked to see what it would cost to have a professional fix, and then I also started to look at what it would cost to do the project on my own. Found a $20 kit from Amazon that I'll link to in the description below that had really good reviews, so we went ahead and pulled the trigger and brought this in and decided that we'd save a couple $100. The manufacturer installation instructions, which I've included to the bottom left, lists just a few tools, but we found that you need a little bit more than that to get this job done right. Everything shown in this image is what we used to tackle this job. Throughout this video we'll be including images from the installation instructions along with the work we're doing, as you see in this image where the first step is to turn off the water supply. Next, take a pencil and make a mark at the current water level. Then go ahead and flush the toilet, and as the water lowers down to the bottom, make a mark of the low point of the water in the tank. Next, take a wrench and disconnect the water supply. It's a good idea to have a container to be able to catch all the water that drops as you disconnect the water line. Also, a towel would be helpful because you're not going to be able to contain it all within the container. Next, take your channel locks or adjustable wrench and remove the last nut on this piece right here. Next step is to go ahead and simply remove the old valve from the tank. Next, remove the bolts, washers, and nuts from your tank. In our case, we had 2. In others, you might have 3. With hardware removed, you can now remove the tank off of the bowl. At this point, you will likely make a little bit of a mess, so have some towels ready or something to clean up. From here, you need to remove the mounting nut at the base of the tank, as well as a sponge gasket at the back. This is really straightforward by simply pulling with your hand. In the case of the mounting nut, because we didn't have a pipe wrench, I ultimately resorted to a Dremel to take care of this task. Sure, if the plumber is watching this video, they're just shaking their head in laughter at the fact that someone would do something like this, but ultimately I'm pretty skilled at the Dremel. I've done this on many occasions, and as long as you're really careful not to get the actual toilet, you'll be fine. Once you're through all the plastic, now you can kind of poke and prod at the pieces until they break apart, and you can proceed with removing the equipment. As you see, no damage was done to the tank at all. As long as you're careful, this is a good way of getting it done. Not listed in the manufacturer instructions is to pull the tank out and wash it, which is what I've done here by simply placing it in the bathtub, spraying it with some water, kind of scraping things with my fingers, and getting the tank ready to be able to put back together. Next, you take the fill valve, take this piece off, leave this on. And this is hand tight only. As you're tightening that with your hand, you want to make sure this is angling that way, not that way. So you got the hole here and this kind of pipe here. Right now, the two together are angled that way, and you want it that way. You don't want it to go that way. Here we're taking the new sponge gasket, placing over the top of the mounting nut, and then lifting the tank and placing it back in its original location. Next, grab the included hardware. In our case, we only had 2 holes in our toilet, so it's pretty straightforward, but it came with enough for 3. Each bolt will start with a rubber washer at the very top, which is this red thing. Then that will slide in from up above, and then from below you'll take a metal washer and the nut and twist that up and then start to tighten. It's important to not over tighten, as you can break your toilet, but you just want to watch, and what they recommend is to alternate tightening a little bit on one side, then tightening a little bit on the other side, going back and forth until it's level. And that's exactly what we did, is we brought a level to verify that. The next step is to set the height of the overflow tube. And this can be done by getting a ruler and a pencil and making measurements. One from first this flushing nut, which you see in the video here, measured 2 inches from the top of the toilet to the bottom of the flushing nut and made a mark on the toilet. Then from here you need to make another mark 1 inch below, because the overflow tube should not be within 1 inch below the flush lever nut. So at this point, that line shows the height at the bottom of the lever nut, but you need to go an inch lower than that. So that's what this marking is right here. A good tactic that I found when it comes to measuring the height of the overflow tube is to take the ruler itself and to lay it on top of the overflow tube to see the height. And it's not supposed to be, or it's supposed to be at least 3/4 of an inch above the water line. So the water line again is this bottom one that we marked at the very beginning. So it needs to be 3/4 of an inch above this, which is that mark. And it's got to be an inch below this, which is that mark. So it's got to be somewhere in this range. Which again, you can see that it is. So it's at an acceptable height. Next, you want to take this piece, get the little tube and push it on. It's really quite straightforward. And then from here, grab this piece, hold with your right hand and twist, and then it'll extend. Okay, next, you want to go ahead and put this in your hole, and then you lower this to the point of the bottom of this gray part to line up with the height of that. And again, we'll use the roller as kind of a guide to help us do that. Just push down, keep pushing, keep pushing. Might have gotten just a tiny bit too much. But you can put the ruler, and as you can see right now, the ruler is about hitting the bottom of the gray part. So that you want the height of the bottom of the gray part to line up with the height of this. Now once you have that height to set it, go ahead and take it out of the tank. And then you twist the upper half of the valve clockwise to lock. So clockwise being this way. So now it's locked in with these pieces here. So go ahead and place it back down. Next you want to line up and make sure that the tube is aiming for this area. And then you can get this piece and come from below the toilet to cinch this up. This is what's going to tighten this to the toilet. Okay, do that hand tight. As you can see, now it's stable. Next, it is to attach the chain to the lever with as little slack as possible. Now this particular lever has 3 holes here, and then it has 2 kind of holes up the top. I found that the best way to do that without having a lot of slack was to simply pull the chain
to the top here and then lower this down into this guide. Don't know how easy that is to tell, but there's really not a whole lot of slack. It's pretty tight, so should work. Next we're going to go ahead and put this tube to then fill into there. You have to trim this depending on your setup, but we're going to use this little piece to guide it, and we'll measure how much extra we need to cut off from the little skinny black tube. So be careful not to push down too tight here, otherwise you'll mess up your height. That was a little bit of a pain in the butt, but I got it. It's still not lower than where it should be. Then what we need to do, so you're not supposed to put this tube like way down in the hole, so you do need to trim, and they don't want it to kink. So what we'll do is take it to about here, snip off, and then we're gonna put it on this. Just had to confirm what that was, and sure enough the black tube goes over the silver part now. It might take some force to get this to happen, and in the process of doing that you might bump the overflow tube height. So we'll definitely want to remeasure everything when we're done. In the process of doing that, I did bump this tube down a little bit. So again, just to double check, you can take your ruler, bendable ruler is kind of nice in this situation, get it about level, and push it back. And as you can see, it's just above the mark where I need to be. So we're good, and it's well below the top mark. Okay, next is to reattach the water supply line, but do so with Now next you want to turn the water on and look for any leaks coming from the places where you hand tightened everything. As you can see, there is a little leak, so go ahead and tighten it a little bit more with the hand and keep doing that until we can confirm that there aren't any leaks coming. Okay, we'll try that again. Tightened it a couple turns. Kind of watch this and make sure no drops are forming. Looks good. Also, this gives us an opportunity to check on how the water is flowing in. As you can see, it's flowing in nice and directly.
The last step after the water is filled all the way to the top is to turn off the water and then to flush the toilet and see the water level that results from the flush. As you can see, we have about 2 inches of water at the bottom of the toilet, which is about the height of the water when we started the project after flushing with the old equipment before we replaced it with the new. Because of that, our system's kind of dialed in. We don't really need to do anything from here. But if you aren't within that half inch space between the water level from the old equipment to the new, then you need to make some tweaks and adjustments. To make adjustments, remove the red flapper and twist this bottom portion of the dial until you see the hole line up, and then go ahead and repeat the process by turning on the water, filling up the tank, turning off the water, then flushing and seeing the height of the water level when the water is at the bottom. You can make finer adjustments by twisting the very top of the dial where you see these numbers from 1 to 6. 6 meaning more water is going to be used, 1 meaning less water. Again, lots of flexibility and adjustability with this flapper. In this clip you see the water doesn't drop nearly as far down on the toilet, and again that was just me playing around with the flapper and trying different numbers and settings. Ultimately you need to play around with this flapper and get a good idea of the tweaks to make it optimal for your situation. I will put a link from the manufacturer's video showing a little bit more in depth about this process. Ultimately I didn't need to make a lot of tweaks. I was able to use the default configuration and it worked out great for me, but if you're having trouble is getting everything dialed in just right, check out that link in the video description and it'll be able to help you out. The last calibration is timing the filling of the bowl with the timing of the filling of the tank. And you have this black adjustable knob right here in the picture. It comes default in the 3 o'clock position. Here it's at about the 1:30, 2 o'clock position, but it can turn more to the left and be in the noon position. What that basically does is it speeds up the flow of the water going in the black tube down into the toilet bowl down below. Ideally what you would like to do is match the conclusion of the filling in the tank with the conclusion of the filling in the bowl. The ideal scenario is for both to end at about the same time. Coming full circle, my wife's original complaint was the water level was too low in the bowl. So replacing the 18-year-old equipment and calibrating it just right made a huge improvement in improving our bathroom experiences at home. If you've enjoyed this video, may be interested in subscribing to our channel, DIY Around the Home, where we share videos on do-it-yourself fixes, appliance installation, car repairs, smart home technology, and just any other thing that happens around the home. Thanks.